Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to have a chat to you about transforming production for the 21st century. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been doing production-related things for many years, going way back to the 70s, unfortunately. So I've seen a lot of transformation throughout that time. That was a pre-digital age. So and I've done that in Europe, all through Asia, and in Australia, all down the eastern seaboard. So this is a subject I've worked with for a long time, most of my career, and it's transformed many times, but hopefully today I can give you some pointers that will help you transform as well. So what we're going to discuss today, a few things. So what is the definition of production and the transformation of production in the 21st century? What's it look like? I'll give you a brief history of previous transitions that have happened over time. We'll look at some current challenges that marketers have. Then we'll do an overview, a bit more of a deep dive into the various media channels. So TV is talking about broadcast media, which also includes video and radio. Print, which is what we would define as magazine, newspapers, outdoors. Then we have printing, which is what we are looking at now, which is commercial printing and digital printing. And then we get to the main topic, which is digital, where we all know this is where things are moving to. Then we'll go through a few traps that I can see marketers get into. And then I'll give you some tools for future-proofing the way you approach production today. So firstly, what is production in the 21st century? Firstly, it's a digital world. Therefore, the most important thing we have to do is to understand that these assets are very valuable and they will be repurposed. So therefore, the actual storage of them is the most important thing you'll do. You need to store them in an organised fashion so they can be reused throughout. So that's a key stone for production today. What it isn't based on is the way that advertising agencies and other suppliers have been charging you. There's a lot of legacy terms that are used that come from the old days of advertising that we still see constantly when we do assessments around production costs. And these are protecting agency revenue centres, but it's not what moving forward is. We need to get rid of these, we need to understand them better and use terms that are relevant to today. We also have to be careful as we move into the digital world. There's a lot of acronyms floating around. I think a lot of it's used to confuse us all. But and it's all about the complexity of actually doing anything. At the end of the day, we're just someone's actually helping you publish. It happens to be in a new channel called digital. So it's about these partners you engage with, helping you define your strategy, not making it very complex by talking a strange language that we don't like to always admit we don't understand. The 21st century is also about the opportunity to reach and actively engage with customers that we only dreamt of in the past. These are, go back to the way that things used to be channeled before with the old mediums we used to go to. It couldn't be engaged, but with that comes the challenges of how we get relevant content in a cost-effective manner and how we produce that content to actually get out to all those customers. We're seeing a seismic shift away from TV production as a one-off. Obviously there's still a need for it in brand, but it's also around test and modify when we're actually using the digital channel so that we can actually have lots of testing going on, being in static forms of banners or being in the video forms. How do we actually do that in the 21st century? And unfortunately what we're seeing, and I'm seeing maybe 3 printing companies in Australia a week going under. Commercial printing is dying in the form. Everyone's trying to hang on to it, but it is unfortunately changing. We'll touch on that point and help you transition away from that if you need to as well. And I think there's, my view is there's a rebirth of the publishing model, not the publishing as it was traditionally known as pushing out magazines, but the skills around publishing, where they helped to actually generate the content, they had writers involved and photographers, and they were pulling together articles that they were then pushing out through the old channels. We're doing exactly the same thing. We need to organise content and then move it out through our modern channels, being the digital channels. So let's have a look at some traditions that we have known. These are most probably ones I have known. Some of you aren't old enough, but I've seen most of these. I even saw one before this time. When I first started in advertising production, they were still using letterpress. And it's not that long ago. We had, and I was one of the first people to transition away from letterpress into what was LIFO, but there was a lot of people were very, very scared what this was going to do, because we all get stuck in our ways and we have comfort. But to move away from that was a big move in the good old days. But the ones that you're most probably all familiar with, even understand, would be when TV came out. I'm sure none of you are old enough to remember when TV was first started, but there was a talk about that was going to be the death of radio, because radio was where everyone got their news and entertainment. So that was the mainstream of mass marketing, was going through radio before TV. So what the presumption was going to happen was that people would leave radio, therefore as a channel, we wouldn't have to produce things for it anymore, and use this modern equivalent, which was TV. But radio has actually reinvented itself. Digital has actually allowed podcasts, specialised radio and content being pushed out by that channel, and it's helped marketers now target the message through that channel. And from a production point of view, nothing really has changed there. You're still producing good audio, there'd be a lot better production values around it now, but the same thing's occurring. And TV itself, as it was going to replace radio, is actually the one that's under threat from things like Stan and Netflix, as well as the digital channels, and obviously anything that's happening on the computers themselves. So it's more under pressure than radio is. The other one that we've seen is radio magazines replaced by digital. Obviously, newspapers, magazines, specialist magazines especially, where everyone got their gossip and they got their news. And the massive amount of money being generated through classified advertising in the newspapers allowed them to subsidise and everything else around journalism, quality journalism, which was their form of content. But that's actually, the fault there was that would transition at a hopefully an organised pace over time. But the mobile phone has changed that, so that's actually speeding up very, very quickly. So newspapers and specialist magazines are going under all the time, as people actually can actually look for the content they want, as opposed to it being served up in not very timely manner with both those streams. Then internet advertising, which is a very interesting side. This is not necessarily all relevant about production, but it's we have to think about what we're going to have to deliver into these channels. So paid targeted media-based advertising based on consumer search behaviour is what was actually been happening with programmatic bookings. Therefore, and there was always going to be continuous growth and an increased level of targeting that would get more sophisticated, and things would be pushed out through Facebook, LinkedIn and all the other channels there. So content was required to fill those spaces. The interesting release of Apple's latest phone with the ad blocker software in there is causing a few scares for the likes of Google. I'm sure Google will come back strongly, but it does change the dynamic. If paid advertising can be blocked, what does that actually mean for internet advertising? And it's a good, we have lots and lots of bookings can be made, but with too much space, we don't necessarily have the right content to actually fill it. So that's a big challenge, is what actually is happening today as well. So what challenges do marketers have today? We talked, I mentioned briefly about test and learn deployment when we're going out. The opportunity is to create content that is highly targeted to as a one-on-one piece of communication. And the first thing we actually we were talking about was how to generate content for the test and learn deployment. With more things with more places to put things, how can you actually keep those costs under control? So big challenge there. And as the content gets more complex and files get larger, you have the problem of where to actually store those, and then how to actually receive those in an orderly fashion. When I talk about receive, that is, you've got multiple people assisting you with creating this content, and you need to keep it in a central place. So how are they actually going to upload those assets for you? The third area where I think there's a challenge is when we talk about building content in the digital world, who's actually going to build that for you? Obviously, all your partners will be putting their hands up to do that. But should that sit with, because you're actually talking about the brand or you're talking about offers, traditionally PR companies might be helping you with that. Should they create a lot of that content? I'm sure they're volunteering to do that. Or should you bring that in-house? There is no, depends on the channel you're going down and where you're communicating there. Can you actually put a team together inside and do all your social to actually push that out yourself? Do you have to go to a third party? Or do you go to an external service? And again, is this publishing? Is it the skills of publishing we're actually looking to do? And what can we learn from that existing channel that was actually out there, that was helping all those days? Are there things we can actually bring across to help you? One of the things we're seeing is the pressure on costs. Now, production is always seen as an easy target, and procurement, I've been looking at this. I've just been looking at a bit of research that came through, and where procurement people around the world believe they could actually add value. Now, printing was an area where there was always a focus because it was a commodity that could be bought. But the biggest one where they believe they can add value is around the concepts and creative area. Very difficult one, but if they're going to come for it, we need to actually get prepared as we move forward to see how we can manage that, because it's about value, not about price. So the metrics are very different to buying a commodity like printing. One of the other challenges is managing the negotiation rights and releases across multi-channels. You'll get your agency partners to do this, but it needs to be clear that everything you do needs to be managed, so it shouldn't really be a conversation that's taking place. It's obviously fairly specialist. There's some legal issues around this, but it is a challenge for you, because this content that's of value to you is no value unless you can actually put it where you wish to. So also the question is when to decouple and what parts to decouple in that production line. As I've mentioned, creative, very tricky one to try and decouple, and don't suggest we do that straight away. But other areas, especially in post-production, be it in print media or in a TV or video production, do these have to go through what was a traditional agency model? Can they actually be done elsewhere at a more cost-effective price and still get the value you're after? And the final challenge is, as everyone pressures to go away from commercial printing, how do you do that in an organised fashion? We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. We want to make sure it's done in an organised fashion. So I'll give you some pointers when we get to the printing detail around maybe how you'd like to approach that. So firstly, let's look at an overview of TV production. Now, there's still a place today in the 21st century for high-value TV commercials. They'll still generate a return on investment if done properly, even the highly expensive ones. But it's not the same landscape. Those costs now have to look at where else they're going. So you have your paid media, where they go. This content, again, let's use that term, is going to. Then you have your owned media, which is your own customers that are coming to you, that you can actually share what you've generated in the video TV space. And then you have the earned, where that's shared, where you've shared your owned customers that you've sent this out to, then actually share it with everyone else. and it's earned. So the multiples that are used to look at production costs versus the reach have been thrown a bit on their head. It's actually about forecasting how many people see it, as well as looking just at a paid. So there's some more work to be done in that space. In TV, digital is the only game in town. No film. It's all about digital. It's about the right level of digital as well to actually use around production values. Creating the video content itself can be achieved by multiple suppliers. It doesn't have to be a one-stop shop anymore. Let's look about the past, and past is the recent past, and we'll look at the future around TV. I'll go through these one at a time and look at what I believe is actually going to happen in the future. Talent and other fees are charged by each channel. With the internet and the actual delivery through it, that can't actually keep going on. There needs to be multi-channel buyouts every single time to be organised. So you can deploy that content that you're actually paying to create. The ownership of rights held by the originator. You need these transferred across as much as you can, and these conversations shouldn't be had just before you're about to actually engage on the production of video or TV content. It needs to be done at a higher level with your providers so that they know that when you're actually doing something, or when they're producing something for you, that's a given, as opposed to long conversations around where it should be. There's always been, and there still should be to a certain extent, high production values required in all cases. But as we actually go on to the computer and the mobile, questions have to be asked around what level you need to do. So therefore, what costs are you willing to incur to get the top level of values on everything you do? All production stages are specialised, so end-to-end production is tightly held. Now, there was fear around how a major production commercial would be made because there's a lack of knowledge, and it was a lot of labour involved, a lot of intelligence and experience involved. Software's come in, especially at the back end in the post-production area, to assist, but still it's tried to be held for vested interest very closely to an agency who would want to control the end-to-end process. There's an opportunity there to couple and use the software that's now available to give you more options. The last point there is the concept and creative ideas are also being outsourced, as well as some of the back-end parts of post-production. Let's next look at print production. As I said before, print production, we'll call that magazines, outdoors, newspapers, anything in that traditional channel. Now, I believe it is a shrinking market. We're generating content for digital, and we might choose to place it there. But we still need to actually manage it. A lot of the things you can control around production, I think, are cost related, and these are things around the repurposing costs. They're not very transparent. You'll be charged for all the channels separately, where really you're creating one piece of content and actually deploying it across these channels. So the size does matter when you're actually doing this, but it needs to be transparent when you do it. Old world cost centres are still being used to maintain agency revenue streams. We still see some very strange things going on, what they're charged for, and it's normally double charging head hours for generating a PDF, which is a touch of a button, which is not particularly good. I understand the agency's point of view, but it doesn't actually help marketers. Photography and retouching costs are misaligned. I'll touch on how that is, what I think's happened there, and I think that needs to be watched very closely. So charging for artwork items in the past that are not used anymore. So these are, again, legacy terms that will appear on estimates you need to actually look out for. There are many, and it depends on who you're dealing with, but it should be a much simpler process nowadays. Software is replacing a lot of labour. When we talk about photography, it's changed. Photographers are still doing it fairly badly. Lots of photographers around scrambling for the work, and most of those are still trying to capture as much as they can in the camera. But what we've seen is then we have various other parties, be it your agency or a third party or the photographer himself, then charge for retouching. So they've not captured the final shots in camera, which used to happen before we had the wonders of digital retouching. It's actually now an extra cost. So while photography costs have remained static, we see retouching costs are actually spiralling, and allowances for retouching are always very, very high, where there should be more focus on trying to actually plan and organise the actual shoot to actually minimise that, especially in the print production world, especially if it's actually a shrinking market. We need to actually be careful of that, the way that's actually done. Obviously, we're going to be repurposing that content in other mediums, so it needs to look good, but we need to get that balance in there a bit more. We need to stop the charge for resizing. Again, the way things are actually captured now using modern software, just because it's A3 going to A4 going to A3, it doesn't actually need to be regenerated again. It's just the actual output. Those settings need to be changed. So be careful of that. Hourly rates for simple tasks, again, that's what's being charged at the moment. Anything that's touched in the current, a lot of the arrangements with your agency partners is around charging hourly rate for something that is really software driven. So in the future, in this shrinking channel, you'd like to be charged for software or labour, not both. So if it's highly specialist work you're doing, you do need the expertise, which is someone thinking about the work. You'll need to pay for the labour. But when it becomes more simple cookie cutter stuff, software can actually come in and actually help you. And in the photography side, a single charge for the image capture, not make it again, trying to make it more complicated. You're looking to actually have a great outcome from what visually this would look like. That's the bit you're paying for it. Don't break it down. And software, as I said, is to replace labour costs, especially in the more simple things, but that's becoming more sophisticated, so you'll be able to take advantage of that as we move forward. And more decoupling, do things yourself, and then not just locally, you can actually do those at a lower risk now, especially in this in the print field. You could even offshore some of that if you're doing multiple work. Just need to find the right partner to actually do that. They can help you with, especially in this space. More complex in the video space, but still can be done. Let's look at poor old commercial printing. I believe high quality printing will survive, but not with the way it's actually set up at the moment. So spending good money, creating fantastic content and delivering that in a hard copy format, there's always going to be a place for that, but it needs to be done at a premium level. Untargeted printing is definitely declining quickly. And any research that's actually come out to defend that position is normally very clouded by the vested interests who want to actually print this stuff. So be very careful on presentations. People talking about the quality and reach and etc. of an unmeasurable, untargeted medium. So in the past with commercial printing, we had long print runs, and after you did a long print run, it was actually put in the store and distributed, or it was used direct mail. And most people would work directly with the printer themselves, via the agency, or obviously buying yourselves. So that was the way it was done. But moving forward, I strongly believe if you can't target it, you shouldn't be doing it. Use another medium. Digital is where this should be. And don't store print on demand as much as you can. And to actually help you organise both those things, you need someone to help you manage this, which is not necessarily your agency or the printer. It's someone who's agnostic to where that content goes. So content's created, it needs to still go to the print format. Use someone who's actually not got vested interest in this, someone who's not a printer, someone who will still get rewarded if they help you transition away from normal printing into other areas. Let's look at digital next, which is the big one. beware of the jargon. Ask for conversations in plain English, and where I think we're all afraid to quote the Emperor's new clothes, to actually say anything. But we need to actually challenge. There's a lot of language used which is deliberately to confuse us. It is a channel. It is actually people preparing things. There is costs around doing that. Let's explain it very clearly what it is. So all communication is going to end up digital. So it's not a specialist service. Therefore, digital in front of or within an agency name or a partner name is superfluous. Everything is digital. What we are seeing, again, this is not necessarily a production issue moving forward, but the movement from paid to owned media, you're still creating content is where your costs and the way you actually produce your production is going to come into play. But own it, so therefore it's actually back to the storage of it. So in the past we used to design, produce, use and discard, but moving forward we need to design, produce or repurpose, find that asset, use it and reuse it, recycle it and restore it. There's going to be a lot more uses for it, so back to that, making sure you control those assets. The agencies have been producing most of this work locally. There's a few exceptions to that when we're set up, but outsourcing and offshoring the back-end production is something that can now be done with far more safety. There's especially on the lower coding areas you can actually do. The front end you still need design done here still, but there's a lot of other things you can actually get done offshore at a much better cost, and timing also comes in depending on the part of the world you come in. If you're in a retail area and you need to do things quickly, again, this is another area where you can you'll be publishing this work, and therefore there's other options, not just locally. Big challenge is we have lots and lots of places where we can currently put paid media or our own media, and we need to create content that actually match up with the customers' requirements. So we need to test those as well. The opportunities to test, that's not building them one by one. There's definitely program-generated testing strategies that need to be employed. So you, again, use the software to deploy that. That has been around for many, many years, but it needs to be actually embraced more strongly to enable you to meet all these channels. But let's talk about some traps that I see out there which you need to be aware of. The first one is we talk asset management, we talk dam management. We see a lot of proprietary systems being introduced by agencies to control and centralise those assets under their roof. It is your core business now. You own those assets, so that content you've created, you need to actually own it. You need to understand where you can use it, when you can use it, what it looks like, and you should be then sharing it with all your communication partners. That is the number one thing that you need to do. So be very careful that one of your partners isn't putting on the table something that will lock themselves in your business and makes it harder to move on if circumstances change. And technology changes and you need to move on. If they actually own all your assets, that's not a good negotiation skill tool for you. As I said before, digital in a name does not define an agency's abilities. Digital content is modern day publishing. You'll obviously there's SEO, there's various other areas that you need to engage specialists in the digital world in when you're out to communicate. But just again, I encourage you to step back and look at it. You're going to publish, you're going to create this content with production here, again. Who's the best partner to actually help you with that? It's not necessarily someone who's a really good coder or a really good UV developer. It might be, it's actually the important part is production of that content. One of the things that's still occurring is agreeing hourly rates. That does not help you control the actual cost of the job. There's various other mechanisms you can use. Again, things are becoming, you can standardise a lot of things that we do every day. So to put a fixed rate cards in place is actually becoming more and more popular. So just having a very, very cheap hourly rate won't keep the cost down. It's actually how much to actually produce each of the items you need to do. That's what you need to be looking at. And back to the one that is about budgets. Now that we actually look at various ways of actually getting the content that's being produced for you to market, be it by paid, which is our traditional TV channels and social media and other areas, and then there's we now have owned your own customer base. You're sending that out through your social or other channels. And then you have your earned, when that's actually redistributed by your customers to other people. So looking at what that budget will be, it's not as easy as looking at I've got so many tarps, therefore I can afford to spend so much money on the production of this commercial or this content. You need to actually set it based on where it's going to go, to look at the return on that investment, the amount of people looking at it. And obviously, we still see too many people not setting that at the creative briefing. You want to see, when you look at the ideas, there's no point in falling in love with a great idea that you're going to go to market with if you can't afford it. Set it at the beginning to make sure that everyone understands the expectations around what that you can actually take to market. Let's look at a few tools for the future. We can't look again at the way production was done for the traditional disciplines, which was print, broadcast and digital. I know I've just spent half an hour breaking them down in that manner, but you need to think forward. You advertise by media channel, but you generate digital content in all cases, regardless where it's going, that is used across all the channels: video, podcast, blogs, social, newsletters, etc., commercial print. You're still generating digital content. You need to actually think about that all the time, and actually look at producing one that goes everywhere as opposed to various ones for each channel. You have to invest in a tool that you own those assets. Again, there's quite a lot out there. It's getting better every day. You look at either do that yourself or ask someone to actually give you a hand with that. But think about the value of all the content that you can actually reuse. You need to actually own that, have it come inside it. So, and this is not just about buying software. You'll need someone dedicated, depending on the size of your organisation, dedicated to look after that so it comes in the right manner. The metadata is actually entered correctly. It's actually controlled and managed like a librarian would do around that system that you choose to put in. But if there's one thing you do, I've actually been looking at that today, so that you can actually deploy this content with all these great opportunities out there. Then you need to examine the value you're getting after the idea is generated, and decouple where there is no value being added. If it's just being carried along and passed along and a bit of project management all the way through, and there's third parties being used, what value is your company that's actually project managing for you bring to the table? More and more we're talking to marketers who are looking to decouple. This is especially in the video TV generations stage. One thing again, another thing you need to be looking at. And the last one, back to poor old printing. A printer will not help you move away from printing. They won't help you cannibalise their own business. You need to find someone who will be rewarded regardless of where you actually put that content. They will work with you today to make sure if you have a printing requirement that help you transition away into the future when you don't need that anymore. So it's someone who, again, who's agnostic to help you move away from there. So in summary, 21st century production is about digital and only digital. Think of it all the time. That's all you're producing is digital content to put somewhere. You need to get ahead of procurement and plan what you can decouple to reduce costs, be it offshore and be it locally. Many companies are doing this. If you're not doing it, you need to actually be looking at it today. And the most important one, I still believe, is collect and manage your own content. Put it in a good system, therefore you can actually deploy. Obviously, extremely complex. Trying to put that against sales. we actually have some, TrinityP3, we do have some metrics we use against spend and eyeballs. We actually do deploy it, so we used to talk about a percentage that you should spend on the people who have the opportunity to view it, but a far more complex marketing challenge, as it always has been, that how much have we spent is actually returning dollar to the company from the sale of that product and service. It's far more complicated. There are some more TrinityP3 webinars coming up, which I encourage you to go to the website and look at in more detail. Any more information, please go there, and there's some good ones coming up. It's very specialist. I thank you for your attention, and look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you.